everything is connected. And if we came together, the same evil Black Americans are fighting in the US, the same evil we're fighting here. It's different. It looks different. Maybe ours might be in an invisible hand in a different way in our governments through this and that. For you might face it directly. There's a difference. The way we face things is just different. But at the end of the day, we are fighting the same evil, the same enemy. So the sooner we come together and work together, the better for us.
What's good, Kinganda? The setting looks a little different because we are in Nairobi, Kenya today, and I have a very, very special guest, a young lady. I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, I am Wongel Zalalam, a Pan-African content creator, Ethiopian, living in Kenya, and that's who I am.
Give her a round of applause. So guys, you know, I've been drinking my wine. Okay, so I'm glad to be here. Wongel, I really remember I've seen your journey for a while and didn't have any subscribers. Now you're all big and everything like that, on your way. But when you started working for African, because you were also on African diaspora, shout out to Phil Scott, Kellen and them over there. I was like, who's this young lady on their channel? And there's like, oh, that's Wongel. She lives in Kenya. I was like, but she looks Ethiopian. He's like, yeah, but she lives in Kenya. And I'm like, what is she doing in Kenya? And we were talking about the podcast. We've actually been planning this for at least 2 years now, right? And so you've seen some of my episodes on Ethiopians, maybe. I've interviewed some people from a few. And you're married to a Kenyan.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to dispel some of my rumors here about Ethiopians being sort of to themselves, not really intermixing with other Africans and things like that. But kind of talk about how you end up moving to Nairobi in the first place.
So I was in Ethiopia. I was born and raised there. Joined the workforce, met a boy, fell in love. He happened to be Kenyan.
Okay.
So got married, and that's how I ended up in Kenya.
You got married in Ethiopia?
Yes.
Okay.
We got married in Ethiopia.
Before we get into that, I won't say qualms, my positions have always been that Ethiopians in the diaspora are a little bit more closed off than maybe encountering somebody from Ethiopia in Addis. Because I've never heard anybody say I went to Addis and people were not nice, or Ethiopians are nice everywhere. But when I see like African Americans or anybody dating women in Ethiopia, they seem not to have so much of an issue doing it in your city. But do you feel like if you and your parents had moved to, let's say, one of the cornerstones of Ethiopian America, Seattle, Minnesota, Minneapolis, or Washington, D.C., and then after interacting with other people, that you would have still been able to marry your husband?
I can't answer that because that was not my experience. But to answer your question, you said you believe Ethiopians...
I believe that the Ethiopian community is different.
Different in what way?
Well, when they come to the United States, they're more closed off.
Okay.
And not so willing to interact with others.
My theory and what I believe is that when an Ethiopian leave their country and go to, let's say, Seattle or even Kenya or Uganda, they're all alone. They are looking for something that is familiar. Like, for example, if I can give you my own example, lived experience. When I moved to Kenya, I missed our food. I missed speaking in Amharic because that's my language.
Yes.
Here I'm just speaking in English, a little bit of Swahili here and there. So I really genuinely missed that interaction. So I believe a lot of Ethiopians, it's the belongingness. They're looking for that familiarity. So they hear, let's say someone moved to Kenya and they're like, I miss Ethiopian food. They'll tell them, go to Habesha. So they go to Habesha restaurant and then they find Ethiopians and they're like, where are you guys living? They tell them where they are. So they want to be closer to the food, to the music, to the culture, to the people, to be able to speak in their language because they're new to the country. So my theory is that they're looking for that when they're going to these new places. And then it becomes a thing where that's where the Ethiopians live because every new person that comes from Ethiopia would want to go there and settle there because that's what they know. And they'll tell them, this is where you will buy food because they probably are not even speaking the language, their native language, right? So that's my assumption. For me, I blended in the community. I don't have that, me personally, that experience. My friends, my family, everyone here is Kenyan. But that is what I assume happens with Ethiopians and other communities. I don't think it's just an Ethiopian thing, to be honest, because I see it with other communities as well. Even Kenyans that I used to work with in Ethiopia, whenever they come there and it's been like a few months, they go and find Kenyan food. They go and they talk to each other and they're like, there's this place, a Kenyan restaurant, they serve this and that. And they go and build their own little community. So I don't think they're trying to be that divisive, like I want to be alone, but they want to find something that they're familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up in Black America, when I went to Howard University, which is a historically Black college university, living in DC, I noticed, in my honest opinion, the Nigerians, Caribbeans, all of them had their own communities, Liberians, but they were much easier to interact with. I knew one person that was African-American married to an Ethiopian, second generation American. But the other Blacks, South Africans, Zimbabweans, they're more easier to integrate with than I would say those on the Horn, Djibouti, Eritreans, Ethiopians. And that community, it tends to be very conservative and very quiet and very off to itself. So why do you believe that in comparison to other Blacks in the diaspora, Ethiopians tend to still be more to themselves than, let me say, Ugandans, Kenyans, South Africans, Nigerians?
I don't have the answer for that. If that's really what you experience, that's your experience.
Okay.
If Ethiopians have been that way to you. But for me, what I've seen as an Ethiopian is that what I've heard as well, because my husband is Kenyan and meeting people in a multinational company, working with different people, is that they told me in Ethiopia, they felt the most welcomed, like very welcoming, very open and come to my house and all that stuff. But when it comes to outside of Ethiopia, if that is what is going on, to be honest, I do not have the answer for that.
Okay.
But also don't forget, Ethiopia has been like a closed economy
for
a long time. We don't have, like when I came to Kenya, there was a culture shock of like how open the economy is, how many white people you see on the road. In Ethiopia, you don't experience that at all. We're very like still conservative. Of course, it's changing with social media and now it's 2024. So obviously there's modernization. But compared to other places that have been, South Africa here, or it could be Tanzania, we're a bit more conservative. Yeah,
and they were not colonized like the other ones, right?
Never colonized, so we don't have that exposure to many people. And yeah.
I love Ethiopians, so I don't want anybody to think that I don't.
You've been to Ethiopia?
I haven't been to Ethiopia, but I've interacted. I've worked with a lot of them. I used to live in Poland, so it's quite a few.
But you haven't.
I haven't been, but
you should.
But I'm definitely going to go. Let me ask you this, because so many people, like me, I'm shocked when I hear an Ethiopian is married to a Kenyan, because even in Uganda, it is not possible to see that. I've never seen it. So let's talk about the experience, your husband living in Addis and wanting to marry you, and how did your family accept that?
My immediate family, my mom and dad, didn't even have a conversation about, is he Kenyan, is he Ethiopian? They really didn't care much, or at least they didn't bring it up to me. So I don't think they had any problem with it. I know your question is more so like the Ethiopian side of it. How did they accept? To be honest, both families, people will ask, you didn't find a person in your own country? So that's when I realized it's actually a worldwide thing. It's not just an Ethiopian thing where they're like, even you, I'm pretty sure if you married a Ugandan, your family or relatives will be like, you didn't find
my mother definitely
Black American. Yeah, exactly. So it's more like what you used to. Will they understand the culture? Will they understand that's
your values and things like that?
Values, will they align? But at the end of the day, in my opinion, if you're in love, if that person is genuinely like a good person, why should it matter? Like I don't personally, I don't see that as an issue.
He was working in Addis Ababa, right?
Correct.
Okay. How did he adjust? Because obviously we're going to talk about you adjusting to Nairobi and living in a city that's multinational, brands, economy is very liberal here, open. How did he adjust to the conservative society of Addis Ababa as a Kenyan?
Yeah, he found us to be very conservative, that he told me. He's an introvert personally. Like he was not going out a lot or anything, but he told me that he thought we were very welcoming. That's why I keep saying that. That's his experience, not necessarily mine.
I've heard the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what he said, as well as he loved the spicy food. Most Kenyans don't like spicy food. I was surprised. I was hurt by it because like that's our thing. We love spicy food in Ethiopia. And in Kenya, you can't struggle. You can come as a foreigner and everyone will talk to you in English, right? Like you if you speak English, you'll get by. But in Ethiopia, it's not as, widely spoken English. So it's more like if it's not in the workplace or in the restaurants, you assume what the other person is trying to say to you, or you need your driver to translate for you. That I know he struggles a little bit with communication, but outside of that, the 2 years he spent there, he told me it was a good time, and I believe it.
Okay. So you got married in Ethiopia.
Yes.
Okay, so I know different cultures have different standards for, I don't know, bride price or things like that. I've never heard it about in Ethiopia, but what was the...
In Ethiopia, I think there are a few cultures that do that, but many of the tribes don't exercise that. You just send an elder. The first thing you do if you want to marry a woman, you send elders from your family, like older men, 3, 4, 5 older men. You send them to her family's house and they go and ask her hand in marriage. And then there's this little game they play. They say no the first time, so the second time you come and they say okay and they give you food. So he did that, obviously. He sent the elders. My parents said yes. They didn't say no the first time, they just accepted. We got married like that. Kenyans, on the other hand, they have bride price. Since in our culture, we don't ask that, my dad said, no, I don't need that, but my husband still want to pay for my, but no. In our culture, there's no bride price, but in Kenya, there's dowry. So basically, I was taken for free. That's what they tell me. Basically, he got away with paying, but he will pay, he tells me.
Okay. So you move to Nairobi.
Yeah.
There's nobody here that you know.
Yeah.
Are you living with his family? Or you have your own house now? How does that work?
Well, another thing about Ethiopia is we're very communal. So we're raised and we grow up in the same house. And when you're about to get married is usually when you leave the house. So same thing was for me. I left my parents' house when I got married and came to Kenya. So I went from my parents' house to my husband's house. So I moved to his house, obviously. And so like it was really easy for me to blend in and be part of the family because they made me feel welcome and I never felt like I'm out of place.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was it adjusting to Nairobi from a city like Addis Ababa?
Okay, at first, we're very communal, as I keep saying.
Yes.
So it was like, I felt lonely. There's that culture shock of like, oh my God, I'm all alone. Now there I have friends, family and all that. Now I'm here alone, but I adjusted and I feel like I'm more Kenyan now. I'm more, like Kenyans are more individualistic, like because also they leave their house early from their family's house. They go to boarding schools. A lot of kids, a lot of people I met, they went to boarding school. In Ethiopia, it's unheard of. Not a
Very
lot of
similar in Uganda too, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so in Ethiopia, there's not a lot of boarding schools. So they're more individualistic. So that adjustment of like your neighbor is not really like almost like a family. There it's everyone is together kind of. Now I know it's changing slowly, but that was one of the culture shocks. But one thing, positive thing that I really appreciated moving to Nairobi was, you know, they have an open economy. There's Mombasa port. So you can get things easily. It's convenient.
Yes.
Ethiopia is a landlocked country. So stuff is expensive and accessibility is also limited. So in Kenya, there's so many options and I just fell in love with the malls. I think I would go every day when I first moved just to see, let me try this store today. Let me try that one. So that was my first impression of Kenya and they're very welcoming. I felt that way. Very complimentary. And so that's why I think my transition was easier from Ethiopia to Kenya because they made it, the people made it easier for me. They were very nice, kind. Communication was easy. I can understand them. They can understand me. My in-laws are the best. Loved it. So that was my transition. Yeah.
Okay. You then became a content creator. Very interesting field. You didn't do makeup, cooking, tutorials. You chose Pan-African commentary, which is, I believe that's how Phil discovered you because you were on that path.
True.
So I want to talk about, Pan-Africanism because you said you're a Pan-African. Were you always in that thought process? Was that taught to you as you were coming up?
Growing up, like anybody else, I was focused on myself.
Yes.
Living my life, right? And had no idea about what's going on out there in the world. When I first moved to Kenya, like I quit my job to move here, obviously. And so I was at home most of the time. So what I do is watch videos, read books, because I have all the time in the world. So that's what I was doing. So the more I learned, the more I understood, like there's a lot that I didn't know. Current affairs, finding out how our people are treated around the world, like how colonization is over, but it really is not. How we're free, but we're not. When I learned, I became almost obsessed with it because at night, my husband would come from work and I'll just be telling him all the stuff I learned, all of the stuff I learned about and heard, read. I remember once he's like, why don't you open your own YouTube channel and just tell someone else? I think he was tired. Yeah, so I was like, wait, I can? I knew YouTube channels exist, but I didn't know like it's just one person, you can just do that. I thought it was like you have to be a company. I just didn't have the understanding of it. So I was like, oh, I didn't know I needed to. I invested in, learning how to edit, picked a camera, bought a laptop, started right there. And then that's how I began my Pan-African journey. The more I learned, the more I felt angry at the world and the evil of this world. And that motivated me to speak up. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I remember before I started, I saw someone saying, if you want to make money on YouTube, don't talk about politics. I remember sitting down and thinking about it. And I'm like, but I feel like this is my purpose. Genuinely feel like in my heart, it has something to do with the people of Africa. I have been given something. I just don't know if I know exactly what it is. So I'm like, okay, so be it. If brands won't work with me. And I created the channel, started, and that's how actually, as you said, Philip discovered me. One of those days when he was searching for something, my video popped up, and I only had 300 subscribers then. It's God that connected us, because I don't know how he could find my video, and like I only had 300 subscribers. So he watched the video, he's like, oh, what you represent is actually what I like to talk about on my channel as well. Reached out, and then the rest is history. We've been working together for 4 years.
Okay.
So that's how I began.
So being that you're Ethiopian, married to Kenyan, that is probably one of the goals of Pan-Africanism, because, when I'm, me living in Uganda, I kind of believe that there's a lot that has to be done. I know here in Kenya, there's a lot of generational Gen Z people to protest, getting rid of tribalism. They're trying to be a tribalist crew. How do you think that tribalism is working as a concept in the East African bloc, or just in Africa as a whole? Where are we at as a community?
It's bad.
Why is that?
There are a few things that get me like emotional and just triggered. And tribalism is one of those things, because I can't understand the concept. I can't comprehend how just because you're from a different tribe, I'm from a different tribe, I think I'm better than you. I think I'm above you. I think you're less than. And I'll fight with you and I'll attack you, and all that animosity with one another and with one people. It's mind-boggling to me. I thank God that I was raised in the capital city, Addis Ababa, and my parents never instilled that tribalism nonsense in my head. I'm just so grateful for that. And also, both grandparents come different regions of Ethiopia. Like, I'm mixed with everything.
Okay.
So I feel everyone, like I have love for everyone, because I'm part of that tribe as well. That is why I think it's the cure as well for tribalism, to mix, to just marry each other and to love one another, and to, especially like in a government level, to have
exchange programs,
programs, like allow 10 kids every year. The Addis Ababa University allowed the Nairobi University. Let's swap. Let's learn from each other. Let's see, these Kenyans are human beings just like us. These Ugandans are the same human beings just like us. Like, I believe that you can only have love for that person when you genuinely know them, and when you care for them, and when you interact with them. On paper, it doesn't make sense. I can tell you I love Kenyans, but if I've not interacted with one, it's just very hard, to be honest, right? So I think social media is helping a lot. It's connecting us a lot, but at the same time, this past week especially, I've been on the wrong side of, I guess, TikTok, and I've been seeing so much animosity from Africans as well as diasporans, and there's like almost like a war, and it really made me
animosity
sad.
Towards you?
No.
Okay.
At each other.
Yeah.
And it made me really sad, because I feel like...
In what? Like, give me an example.
I don't want to give out which countries, because I just don't want to be divisive.
Well, I can tell you one that's happened with the African Americans and Jamaicans in the Olympics. That was a big one.
I've seen that.
That's always going on, though.
Yeah, but there are, in the West, they have their own. Western Africa, they have their own. Southern Africa, the Northern Africa. Even East Africa. Literally, I think it was last month that I discovered certain groups of people in a country really dislike Ethiopians in Africa. And I was like, wait, where was I? What? Genuine hate. I went through the comments. They have nicknames for Ethiopians, and I was in shock, because sometimes when you're naive, it helps you to love everyone, and you're like, we're one, and I love everybody. But when you get into that rabbit hole, kind of does something to your heart, but you have to always remind yourself it's okay. There are always that kind of people in any group, and you should not focus on them.
Right.
You should always focus on the majority of people that probably don't even know you exist, and they're as loving as anybody you have in your family, in your friend groups. So that's what I'm trying to do. Redirect my heart. I don't want to focus on the negatives. And I almost felt like last week, I'm like, is there hope for us? Like, are we ever going to unite? Is this gonna, like, am I living in La La Land? But I don't want to be in that position. I always want to work from hope. I want to hope. I want to do what I can. I want to show the positivity and the love for one another and be an example. That's what I can be. And God gave me this channel so I can also use it to bring us together. But I should not be focusing on the negative. So that was a big learning for me.
It seems like you came into a community where you're already married. You had somewhat of a support system. I think that if a lot of people were to come from another African country into a situation like you've done, they may have a great experience. But for some of us, you know, like me, I didn't have any real support system. For us, let's say in the African American community, we're taught that we're from Africa somehow, the slave trade. We don't know exactly where, but we know we also have been taught that all black, you know, is the same. Like, let me give you an example. We talk about people in our community like Elijah Muhammad, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte. These are people that are Caribbeans. Louis Farrakhan is a Caribbean. Malcolm X is half Caribbean. We would, at the time I was coming up, never consider him to be an outsider. And that is sort of changing now. Like Kamala Harris, for an example. It's changing based on people's interaction. So I had a friend that came to Uganda with me. I won't call his name. But when he got there and, you know, he was looking at people like, okay, like we're all the same. And then you quickly find out that that's not how people see you. And it's like, okay, well, damn, I thought you'd be surprised at how many Africans are not taught to look at you in a certain way. And I'm not saying that's wrong or anything, but if more people had your experience, maybe that would be more of the attitude. But when I see a lot of people that come from, let's say, the diaspora back to Africa, because Africans don't really look at everybody as the same, like I would say some of us, like maybe in the African American community do, or maybe some in the Black Caribbean communities. And that's even pretentious to even say that, or precarious to say that. So what about for the people that are like you, that have a very positive attitude toward the Black world and the opportunities that are in Africa? I'm more or less like you, but you come to Kenya and then you find out very quickly that they behind out a smile is this person looks at you as a Mzungu or as a white person or whatever, and you continue to go through that. How do you stay positive through those challenges to try to achieve what Pan-Africanism as a concept wanted to achieve?
This scenario is what I was going through last week, but I have decided personally what I will try to do going forward is stick to what I know, be positive, because majority of these people, let me tell you something. I know you're saying, let's say Africans are going to America and they want to seclude themselves, or like they don't want to have that kind of...
No. That's not all of them. It happens every now and then.
But my point is majority, I would say 95% of those that are living locally, they have no clue about the hate we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're oblivious, like they are living their lives, right? They have no awareness, not just about the hate, but they just don't understand a lot of the things, not because they don't know, they're not smart, but because they're busy with their life. They're busy about worrying about today. The way I was years back, I told you, I was going to college. All I was caring about, like my school and whatever you're doing, you're just living your life. You're not thinking, one, into the future, two, about what's going on outside of Ethiopia. Or for you, maybe before you went to Poland, what's going on outside of the US. You're not really educated. You're not really aware of what's going on. But once you understand the importance, for me, I guess the unlocking, or that moment for me, was understanding that everything is connected. And if we came together, the same evil Black Americans are fighting in the US, the same evil we're fighting here. It's different. It looks different. Maybe ours might be in an invisible hand in a different way, in our governments through this and that. For you, you might face it directly. There's a difference. The way we face things is just different. But at the end of the day, we are fighting the same evil, the same enemy. So the sooner we come together and work together, the better for us. Okay. The better it will be for the next generation. So I would say stay positive, because what's the point? We give up and then what? Yes. The enemy wins. But you put up a fight, you try your best. At the very least, you've spread what you can. Like I remember a girlfriend of mine telling me, she read somewhere that said a person, like an average person that doesn't have any social media presence, that is not famous or none of that, throughout their lifetime, they influence 10,000 people. just one person.
Whoa.
Not an influencer, none of that. So imagine now what kind of platform you have and how you can influence and how you can help people around you and people that are clicking on your videos. As much as it may seem like I'm just one person, what change am I going to bring? And just you feel small considering the magnitude of the issue that we're facing, but it matters. So stay positive, keep doing what you're doing, and then inform the people that are around you so that they're not, if you catch your friend being xenophobic, call her out right away. If you hear your brother or sister calling out Ugandans and you know that's not an accurate representation, call her out right away in a loving way, of course, but make sure that they learn. And then, that's how we can fix things, I think.
One of my biggest passions since I've been living in Africa is the development of the Africa Free Trade Agreement. I think you've done some videos on it before. I've seen you talk about that. Of course, we're still having some issues with the agreement and how it will benefit all of the countries in the AFCTA. But what I like about your story, and I remember when Phil had talked, about you, we were still working with African diaspora when he had mentioned you, he had mentioned your channel, and the fact that here's an African American that can give an opportunity to somebody from Ethiopia living in Kenya, and then everybody can achieve a bigger market. Because of that, I know you, and it would be different if it was just us in our own separate sectors, not collaborating, not bringing a bigger opportunity. And I try to explain this. I told you about one of my templates that somebody from Kenya designed, Satata designed. That template was able to get my mom a house. My mom was a very anti-Africa and kind of just, I don't want to get into her. But when she found out what someone had did for me, it changed her perspective. Like had I had never met him, shout out to Wodamaya, right? If I never came to, Wodamaya told me I was in Johannesburg. Said, you need to come here right now. So I met Dr. Mumi, met him. I met Satati, and my mom wanted to buy a house. That template was what got my mom the house. And when I try to explain this to people in the African-American community or basically in the African communities, that hey, whatever differences we may or may not have, or just, cultures are different. We should try to get a bigger market and try to work together because then we won't even need whites at all, right? But they don't believe it. But explain your situation of how it's helped you and how you have developed and got opportunities from just knowing different people that's outside the Ethiopian community.
Yeah, so Philip, as you mentioned, I've been working with him for 4 years, and it's not just me that he gives out opportunities for. There's so many people that work. Yeah, right?
He gave me one, yeah.
Yeah, so he works.
I gave him one too, though. So.
He has worked with a lot of people across Africa, not just Kenya, not just me.
Yeah.
He works with a lot of people. He is putting money in these people's pockets, right? And also when he's paying you, it doesn't end there. You're also doing work for him. And that work is connecting the diaspora. He's literally, I feel like, bridging the gap and bringing us together because his audience might have never seen my perspective, an Ethiopian perspective.
Right.
That's important for them to hear.
Right.
I would have never gotten your perspective if I didn't hear from Philip. It literally brings people together. And I think your mom's example is the best example because for whatever reason, she had her feelings. She thought Africans are this way. And you literally changed her mind. It took one person for her to think, okay, maybe they're not that bad. And that's what we need to work towards. Don't feel like you're one person. One person can change everything. You just need to meet one good person and it changes the narrative. And it only takes one person to change a country as well. One visionary, right? I know he'll need a team to get to that point, but it took one person to just change the narrative. Right now, we always talk about Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traore. He's doing great things and he came through via coup d'etat, right? You never expect to find that kind of leader through because it's a military leadership. But look at him, how much he's changing the narrative. He's literally stopped sending gold. He set up a plant for refining gold. This decision 10 years down the line is going to help so many Burkinabe people. So obviously us working together, it's not only helping us right now. Yes, it is. And it's good. Not complaining, but imagine long term how many people it will bring. I'm sure you get this in your comments. I get this in my comments, in my email message. People saying, because I watched your video, I went to this place. Now I'm living here. Can you imagine?
Yes.
That's a big impact.
It's a big impact.
Yeah. So us coming together is a good thing. And that is why people try to divide us. That is why I hate tribalism because it's stopping us from greatness. That's how I see it.
Right. Let's talk about you live in Nairobi. And of course, I'm more recognized here whenever I come than even in Kampala.
Wow.
Just walking down the street, I got recognized like 3 times within like 1 minute. It was crazy. And I could walk all through Kampala and nobody even stopped me once, but just on this one street. And so Kenya has been a place where people have showed interest in the diaspora coming back because of the, you know, the economy. What opportunities does Kenya have for other people in Africa, or just people, in your opinion, coming from the diaspora or wanting to relocate here or start a new life here?
One sector I know for sure you'll benefit is the technology sector. Kenya, the infrastructure is good, especially, you know, if I'm comparing it to Ethiopia. Even I've been to South Africa, but Kenya, they're really good. Like the network is really good, the technology and online, they're very savvy. They've developed it to a degree where it can allow you to even make money, to work, to do what we do. It's very...
Especially in the content creation business, places.
That's what I advise people. Content creation right now is equalizing all of us, bringing us together. Even if you don't have the right tools, you don't have those fancy gadgets, you can start, do something. My advice would be Kenya is really good at that right now, and tap into that and grow it even more. So if you have ideas, if you're from the diaspora, you can actually set up here and do more, because I'm sure it's going to be cheaper when you rent a house or rent an office than if you're in the US. You're cutting costs. You've been working with Ugandans and Kenyans. How has it been?
I mean, you have your challenges here and there, but but it's been positive. It's a lot of talent that you can work with, especially Kenyan Uganda market. But in Kenya, you know, they have film schools here. It's a lot of talent, opportunity. And this is a lot of multinational companies here, a lot of international community people here that you can do business with. You can do a lot of things I've seen. So Nairobi, in comparison to like the malls I don't have children, but if you want to take your kids to Siret Center, they can play in the mall and the, you know, video games and the playpens for free. It's very similar to America. Shout out to the resident tourists. They pointed that out first. It wasn't my idea, but I noticed that we don't have such things in Uganda. And you know, you have like Burger King. You don't have McDonald's, but Burger King. So KFC, we have KFC, but it just seems to be, you know, it's a lot more people in the diaspora that you can meet. People will come to Nairobi, but won't necessarily come to Kampala. So I think that this is a good place. They have a lot of major cities that you can, you know, be in. You know, there's Thika close by. There's Eldoret. There's Kisumu.
You have the coast
Nakuru,
as well.
The Mombasa, So it's a lot of opportunities here. Every time I get here, come here, it's like it's getting better. It's not I mean, from what I can see, I don't think it's getting worse. It's getting better. Any last things, I mean, that you want to say, you want to point out, your channel?
I don't have anything to add, just to give you your flowers while I'm here. Hopefully you have your hand out.
Oh, yes. God, I never get them for nobody else.
You have done a great job. I've been watching your platforms. You have so many of them. Well done to you. And also, I like how you paint Uganda. Like, you want people to come to Uganda. You want them to do work there, to invest. I can actually see that you care about Uganda. You have a connection to Uganda.
A lot.
Now you're also dabbling in Kenya. Like, you're doing that. And you're definitely giving us a great example of like how someone can be successful outside of their realm or what they're used to. And you're working with Africans. That's the best example you can give anybody. As a Pan-African myself, makes me so happy to see you working with Africans and have positive things to say. And you guys both are benefiting from one another as you're creating great content. So well done, and
thank you.
Continue doing
They're working with me too, because I'm not easy to work with, as we talked about before the podcast. You know, I'm a fire starter wherever I go. So, you know, it's hard. Sometimes difficult to work with, but I thank you for those kind words, especially from seeing you grow to where you are now, growing from where you are now. You've been growing. Phil, you've done a great job. You know, you finally got one. I was always teasing him, man, where you going? You know, because I used to always have some people I was putting on too. I was like, man, look at all the people I put on, man. You know, where's your guy at? You know, or lady at? You know, I think he got mad and he got a superstar in you. So hopefully we can continue to work together and, you know, give best practices, shady tips for the business. So thank you so much, guys. Make sure you subscribe to her channel. Link to the first pin to the top. I'm going to get another glass of wine. She got water, but I drink. Living in Africa is hard. So peace out.